Moho Tutorial 2-6 introduces some freehand drawing and brush options, and 2-8 gives us an intro to layer styles. In this video, I'll show you how to try out some new shader options and show you a shader that will let you draw and customize the look of an object and show you how to apply different shaders to different parts of the mesh. So fire up Blender and let's get started. So a quick overview of the shortcuts we're going to be using today. We're going to use Shift-A to add an object or node. We're going to use Delete to delete an object or a node. We're going to use the right mouse button and Control and drag to cut node connections, and we're going to use Tab to change to between object and edit mode. Alright, so we got Blender open up here. Let's start a general file. So let's click on our default cube, hit Delete to delete it, and hit Shift-A. We'll go to Mesh, and we'll go to UV Sphere. And we're perfectly okay with the default settings of the UV Sphere, but just for fun, let's zoom in, right click on it, and choose Shade Smooth. Now it looks like a smooth sphere. All right, let's go to our Material tab over here in red. Add a new material slot. Click on New to create a new material. And we're going to call this the sampler, because we're going to be sampling all kinds of textures and different shader types today. All right, so let's go over to our Shading tab here. And this is kind of an outdoor day studio space. So let's go up here to this drop down right here where it says Shading. Hit the drop down and change that to, let's say, an indoor, kind of an interior, more of an interior space. All right. Now the default shader that's tied to every material output when you create a new shader material is the principled BSDF. And this is capable of everything. Let me zoom out a little bit right here. And we're going to hit all these drop down tabs. We can control specular, transmission, how light goes through it, how light reflects off of it, if there's a clear coat, if there's sheen, if it emits light itself, is there thin film, etc., etc., etc. This is a very extensive shader, but a lot of times we don't really need this much shading capability. And so Blender offers us a range of simpler shaders that will allow us to do more specialized things than principled BSDF. So let's delete that. And you notice this turns black, and this is because nothing is connected to the surface on the material output right here. This can actually be useful. I actually did this on my current set. There's a set of stairs that go down. The interior of that hallway, it doesn't go anywhere, so I just put up a panel and just removed the connection to the material output surface. And so it doesn't give off any light, it doesn't reflect any light, the light just gets absorbed into that space, just as it would in a basement with the lights turned off. But let's add some shaders. Let's go to Shader, let's add a diffuse. Go to Add, let's add an emission. Go to Add, let's add a glass. Let's add a glossy. Let's add a metallic. This is good enough. This is good enough. We got quite a few here. We got a selection of 5. This is a pretty good selection, and you can do a lot with even just with these 5. And you notice these have fewer inputs. These have fewer inputs compared to the full principled BSDF. All right, now let's add some textures. So for a texture, let's go with a brick. Let's throw in a brick. Let's we're going to textures here. Let's add a checker. Let's add a gradient. That's useful, pretty useful. Let's add a magic texture. It's magic. Let's add a noise, our favorite, the noise. Let's definitely add a Voronoi. Voronoi looks beautiful. We haven't used that. Let's add a wave too, just for fun. Okay, so let's start with metallic. Let's start connecting these. So let's go from the BSDF output of metallic, plug it into the surface over here, and immediately the sphere turns very metal, starts reflecting everything around it. And you got our base color and the edge tint. The edge tint controls the outermost edge and what color that becomes. You can turn it red. And this is very good for like the very edge of, say, for example, you have a Christmas ornament and you want it to have a bit of a prismatic effect along the edge, along the reflection. Let's plug some things into metallic here. let's plug, you've seen the noise texture before. Let's throw in the Voronoi. Voronoi is beautiful. Plug the color into the base color. And there you go. It is almost like a stained glass sort of texture. And you can play with the roughness to either sharpen or make the reflection more dull. And anisotropy here, this is a bit hard to describe. I have to zoom in pretty far for you to really see this. And it may not show up very well on YouTube. But you raise the anisotropy and it kind of makes the reflection a little blurrier. Not a lot. It's a little hard to see. But let's cut that one. And let's try that on a glossy instead. BSDF to here. Here we have a glossy. So we raise or lower the roughness. It's kind of similar to metallic. However, metallic, again, this doesn't have the edge tint feature. Now let's connect it to the diffuse. And it's kind of diffuse is kind of a plain, simple texture. Let's plug it into the emission. Now you're not going to be able to see this immediately, so let's plug the emission to the surface. It turns a bit lighter, you notice. And this is because emission is actually a light emission. So let's raise the strength, and you can see it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And this could be really useful if you wanted to say, for example, have a light coming out of like the old Pizza Hut stained glass lights, that sort of thing. And let's try it into the diffuse. You can see it kind of warps what's passing through it. Okay, so let's cut these off. Oops, should be control drag to cut them all off. There we go. Let's keep the Voronoi around, but let's try out some of these other ones. Let's see. I know you haven't seen brick yet. This one's pretty simple. So you can have some shiny bricks. You can have some dull bricks, that sort of thing. Let's plug the brick into all these. And let's start with the metallic just for fun. Now you notice brick has color inputs of its own. So you can actually control what these alternating colors are and also the color of the mortar as well. And you can adjust the offset. Let me move to another side here. There we go. You can see the brick a little better on this angle. Adjust the offset. You can have them like aligned perfectly. You can adjust the frequency, how much they squash, that sort of thing. And adjust the scale, of course, that like that. And here's what it looks under glossy. Here's what it looks under diffuse, very dull. And emission, it could actually give off light. And again, you could have the bricks give off light, but they keep the mortar very dull. All right, let's cut those off. And I'd say we're done with the brick texture. Let's look at checker. This is almost kind of a simpler version of the brick texture with fewer options. But again, if you don't need every option, then it's actually better for you. It's much more streamlined. Here's your classic checkered sphere, or CGI checkered sphere. You can look at it under diffuse, play around with roughness, see what you get. Glossy. And metallic. All right, let's try gradient here. We'll plug that into all of our color inputs. Now you don't just have to use the color inputs. For example, you can plug the gradient into the roughness field, and part of the sphere now becomes very dull. The other part becomes very shiny. Interesting, isn't it? Here's the glossy, and we can plug that into the roughness if we want kind of that same effect. Try the diffuse. This is kind of a much simpler one. In emission, one side of it will give off light and the other side will not. All right, you've already seen the noise texture. We'll set this aside. Let's plug in the magic texture just for fun. Plug it into all of the base colors. You've got these crazy blobs and stripes. Play around with the setting, the anisotropy. And even make it metallic shiny. Okay. But that's some of the defaults that you can start with. You can apply all kinds of effects, like you can apply the color ramp to these in order to limit the range of reflection, the range of other things like that. So let's delete the noise. Let's keep glossy. Let's delete metallic. Let's delete diffuse, emission, and glass. Let's keep glossy. Now I'm going to show you how you can actually draw onto a shader. So let's say you like shaders. Let's say you like a basic Voronoi shader, but you kind of want to draw on it as well. You want to make some custom alterations to it. Here's how you can do that. Here's how you can make a surface where you have not only these wonderful textures that you can modify and adjust the scale and things like that, but you can also draw on it as well. So we have our base glossy BSDF here. So let's hit Shift A and let's add in a principled. Now we kind of need the principled because we need one that has an alpha channel. We want to draw on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a layer. We're going to use a mix shader to kind of mix these two. And we're going to have one of them on top of the other. And we're going to use the alpha as a mask to determine which one is visible in the render. Let's add the mix, search mix. And we need mix shader, so we can plug that right here. Oop. This one needs to be plugged into the bottom, and this one needs to be plugged into the top. There we go. It's kind of hazy because this principled shader is just white now. The base color is white right now, and you can play around with the factor to kind of switch them, but you want the factor, actually leave it at 0.5, but the factor is going to be modified by something else here in a minute. And now let's hit Shift A. And we need an image texture. And we need to create this image texture. So hit New, and we're going to title this Overlay Drawing. Leave it at 1024 by 1024. Generally, these are going to be doublet numbers. So 512 by 512, 256 by 256, depending on how much memory you want to use up. Make sure alpha is turned on, and this part is very, very important where it says color. Click on that. Turn the alpha all the way down. This will not work if you don't turn the alpha all the way down. You're going to end up with an orb that is completely opaque, and you're not going to be able to draw on it because there's going to be so much other stuff on. All right, so now hit New Image. Now drag the color into the base color. Because this image is transparent, it doesn't do anything to the mix shader, but we want to do two more things. We want to hit Shift A, search for invert color. Drop that here, take the alpha, plug it into the color, take the color, drag it into the factor. And again, nothing changed because we haven't drawn on this yet. So now, just for fun, go to your texture paint, and our object disappeared. There we go. Make sure you have material preview turned on. Zoom in. Maybe shrink our pen size down a little bit. But now we can draw directly on the texture, and the drawing appears in the UV edit over here. You notice you got these pointy parts here. Those represent the top center of the sphere and the bottom center of the sphere. But now you can just go around. You can draw whatever you want on the sphere. And let's change color here just for fun. Let's go into red. Let's go with a blurrier brush. Almost like an airbrush. See that cut off because we reached the edge. But there's other tools too. Here's a smear. That's an eraser. Sorry, that's an eraser. This is more like a different kind of eraser. These red ones are all erasers. This one here is the smear. Here we go. You can add like little sections of blur, kind of mix them together, mix your paints. Let's add another color just for fun. And also make sure to go up here and hit save. Well, that's because we're on smear. We can't draw anything new because we're on smear. All right, let's pick another color. Let's go into blue, make it a little more vibrant. Let's draw an outline around this piece right here. Let's make it even thinner, and just for fun, pick another piece and just, try giving it an outline. Now you notice those pixels start to be here because we're reaching the limit of the resolution. We set this at 1024 by 1024. So these little squared edges are kind of the limit of that resolution, the smoothness of that. And you can even draw here on the actual UV map as well and just make things appear. All right, now for our final thing is our final activity, I'm going to show you how to put multiple textures or multiple materials on one object. So let's click on our object here, make sure we're on layout, hit tab to go into edit mode. Select a chunk of these faces. Just pick some at random here just for fun, or pick specific ones if you're looking to do that. Hit the plus sign over here to add another material slot. Hit new. And now you've got this new material. We're just going to name this alt material and hit assign. And it blanks out because this is again the default BSDF over here. Let's turn that to red, make it really shiny, metallic, roll the roughness down so it reflects a lot. Hit tab to go back into object mode, and you can see a chunk of this now has that property. So that is it for this tutorial. Depending on how long it takes to get my next major assets working, I may introduce you to my 2025 New Year's resolution, which went pretty well. Give some different shader types a try. Click all the usual YouTube buttons if you would, please. That's actually been helping lately. And happy animating, and I'll see you next video.